And we're live, aren't we? Starting to scare me. Almost as good as the school.
Finally saying live from Webster Town Hall for the third time.
Okay, thank you. Call a meeting of the Webster Board of Selectmen for April 6, 2015 to order. First order of business, pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And right now we have approval of minutes, and I think we have Monday, March 23rd, 2015, regular session. Entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
No other discussion. Courtney, you want to poll the board, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're going to take out of order, gentlemen. We'll be right with you from the Legion post. But right now, if we could have Michael Costin, appointment as registrar. I tell you would make this quick, Mike. We did get your letter. I know you've been around and around and around and around, and you've been a big help. And I don't see any, I would entertain a motion that we have Mike be on our Board of Registrars. He's filling a spot, by the way, and he's been active for
12 years.
12 years.
12 years running.
That's
yeah.
all?
That's all.
And we appreciate
All right,
that.
thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Yes.
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 Thank
Thank
you.
you, Michael.
Thank you. Okay.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike. Take care.
Okay, now we have Webster Dudley, American Legion Post, one-day liquor license request for entertainment license request. And we have that before us. We even had everything that you got. Gentlemen, please. Come on, Charlie, you can come up. Had quite an itinerary here,
Yes, sir.
which I think is fantastic. And this, let's see, be for June 6, 2015, from 12 to 8. Admission is free, and you're going to have police, crowd management representative, you have tips certified personnel, you have a whole itinerary of what you're going to be doing on the D-Day Memorial / Spring Fling timeline. And you're gonna be starting around, setting up, you're gonna have a road race, color guard chaplain's prayer, festivities, vendors, bake sale, arts, crafts, DJ Adams Brothers, 50-50 raffle, have a band, an intermission, second band, another intermission, I mean, it just goes on and on. I think this is fantastic. And I'd seek a motion by the board to approve this for June 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Just a quick discussion
Oh,
first.
please, I'm sorry.
So, Courtney, we've gotten everything's been submitted for liquor liability, because I know there was a question on that.
Correct.
Okay. And you're planning on having, where you're gonna have the liquor outside, you're gonna have it in a roped-off area?
So basically, we do not have a roped-off area. If that's what's required, then that's what we'll have to do, I guess, is provide that.
I know down at the beach, if we have festivities down there, sometime they have either a tent and/or an area, and you have a police presence there, just as a suggestion to you to do that. So maybe you have an area either in the
So
lot or
basically,
in the
in the
front.
diagram that I have shown, Mr. Chairman, if we were to take where it shows the vendors,
Yep,
from at that, so let's say halfway back on the building on the American Legion, or maybe from the front parallel surface of that building, we rope it off around that entire area, that would be fine?
that sounds fine to me,
Very good.
Absolutely.
if that's okay with you. We want
would
the
be-
festivities, especially D-Day.
So, no, not outside that perimeter, they cannot have any alcohol, we'll have to stay within that perimeter, or
Correct.
within the building, which we already have a license for.
Exactly.
Very good.
Is this going to be an annual event?
We'd like to make it an annual event.
It sounds like a lot of thought went into this process,
Yes.
so we wish you the best of luck. Hopefully I'll be able to make an appearance as well as the other members of the board, I'm sure.
That would be great,
Would like
thank
to
you.
support you.
Very good. We have a motion, we had the second, we had the discussion. Any other discussion? Courtney, want to pull the board, please?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, school department, budget discussion.
So, Mr. Chairman, this has been some ongoing work between myself and the school superintendent and our assistant superintendent for business affairs and our chairman of the school committee. I think we've probably met at least a half a dozen times, myself and Mr. Avalos and Dr. Malkus. And I think the board's aware we've had 2 joint meetings, I think, is that? One joint meeting?
For this fiscal year.
So this would be the second one, apparently? And I think the board's probably aware, for some months now, we've been talking about getting rather concerned about a growing challenge between our levy limit increase and what we get for state aid increases and how we make all of that work in a community where I think we take a lot of pride. We feel like we're on the right trajectory. This year, we had concerns would be one of our tougher years, and it is unfortunately shaping up that way. A lot of things we knew would be kind of landing, if you will, right smack dab in the middle of the FY16 budget cycle. Police building that's in full operation now with all of the costs associated with utilities for the police. Likewise, Park Ave, truly a remarkable facility to serve this community very, very well. Bigger operation, not surprisingly, some bigger utility costs. And with that conversation, I think we had some very good dialogue back in February, was it, or April, where we had the joint meeting last. And I think at that point, we had talked about, for 3 years now, what the pattern's going to be, and if we're gonna have to have that awful discussion about the O word that a lot of communities have had. I will tell you the preliminary budget numbers I will get into in a bit, but it looks more than just challenging. The board's aware our levy limit increase is around $485,000. $485,000 is our levy limit increase. Just our, not that any one of these things is a problem child, but just our Bay Path assessment, retirement costs, our health insurance increase, property casualty liability, transportation, which was actually a good number this year, but all those individual numbers that have a sizable increase really drive a number that's at least twice our levy limit increase. So right out of the gate, I think I provided the board with that night. Our fixed costs far and away exceed even our levy limit increase, and then we have to look at operational realities and improvements and in keeping our community stable. So with that, I don't know if that's a good segue, Mr. Avalos, to talk about goals on the school end. I know for our end, the police station up and running, a senior center now that we're going to be staffing a little bit differently. Police dispatcher, the regional dispatcher operation, it's no secret we're on the cusp of getting a third community. We're still seeking that third community. It's a big difference for us. Our our veteran services cost, and I know we're very supportive of that. The reality is that one item this year is up $140,000. Now, 12 to 18 months from now, we'll receive 75% of that back, but there's no way that you softly approach the levy limit. It's a full hit as that increases. So we'll encapsulate this better as we move forward in the next few weeks through the budget cycle, but our increases here in the operational side, department to department, there's really nothing substantial or material, but when you look at some of those individual increases, and then, as I say, you think about or evaluate the fixed cost increases, and it gets very large very quickly for our budget, our proposed budget deficit.
Thank you, Mr. McAuliffe. Members of the board, thanks for having us here tonight. I thought this would be an extension, actually, of the joint meeting that we held back in February with the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, the School Committee, and the administrators, where we opened the discussion on the FY16 budget. I wanted to briefly just go over the school portion with you. I gave you a couple of handouts. It's not my intention to go through this. There's no quiz at the end. But I did want to just summarize it for you. The first one is the one entitled School Budget, July 1st to June 30th. On page 3, you'll see a message from the superintendent. And by the way, I just want to let you know, the superintendent sends her apologies for not being here tonight. She had a personal issue that she had to take care of today, was not in the district. She very much wanted to be here, but insisted that we hold the agenda item, even though she couldn't make it. And I hope we get an opportunity for her to address you at some later time. Basically and we talked about this at the joint meeting, Webster Public Schools in 2016 is in a very unique situation. We are literally opening 3 new schools. Although we're opening up a brand-new Park Ave, the grade configurations right across our school district would really warrant a budget that services 3 new schools. As we know, Park Ave is going from a pre-K to grade 2 to a pre-K to grade 4. Grades 3 and 4 are coming over from the middle school, and grades 7 and 8 are going to the middle school from the high school. So we will now have a grade pre-K to 4 Park Ave, a 5 to 8 true middle school, and a 9 to 12 true high school in our district. And we're pretty excited about that. Not only, of course, excited about the brand-new Park Ave school, and we're anxiously awaiting the completion of that and having our grand opening this summer. But we're excited because we think the grade reconfiguration is going to be a huge plus for our district. It's one that staff, parents, and the community, I think, have looked for a long time. But in doing so, it's very difficult to budget. You know, typically, you go to budget season, you look at what you did last year, and you add or subtract and kind of budget within the confines of your revenues, and you have your budget. But in this instance, we really wanted to know across the board, and our direction from the school committee was, tell us what you would need if you were starting from scratch with 3 new schools. And this is the product that you have before you. The budget guidelines that we used in trying to determine this, obviously achieving excellence in our curriculum and instruction, maintaining a safe and secure environment, maintaining a rate of budget growth that's at a responsible level with consideration definitely to the town's financial condition. Some of the factors that would affect a budget such as this: staffing and enrollment. Although our staffing has been relatively flat over the past 10 years or so, we are beginning to see smaller increases gradually coming into our district. We would like to think that the improvement in our district over the last 3 to 4 years have contributed to that, along with the fact that our grade configuration now may make it more attractive for families to send their children to our public schools. And staffing has been relatively flat. Whenever we needed to add staffing, it obviously meant we needed to adjust a staffing issue somewhere else. But as far as support staff goes, we've seen a dramatic decrease in our staffing. In order to support budgets under the constraints of 2.5 and limited state funding, you're looking at, in order to keep your instructional core, teachers, instructional aides, et cetera, in place, support staff needed to be adjusted. And we've seen significant decreases in things like secretaries and administrative assistants, in custodial staff, and those types of positions that support what we do on the instructional side. Another major factor affecting educational costs: technology. I don't think there's any surprise there. We're opening a brand new Park Ave school with the latest in technologies, including a wireless infrastructure that's gonna support a one-to-one device initiative for our Park Ave students. It's a real exciting time for us to be able to offer that, particularly at an age where these students are just beginning to learn how to use devices, particularly in a proper manner and in an educational manner as well. Unfortunately, that leaves us with two other schools that do not have the same infrastructure, do not have the same equipment, and certainly not have the number of devices that we would need to offer the same type of programming. So that has been incorporated in our budget in what amounts to a 3-year plan to provide our district across all grades with a device. And then special education, I don't have to tell you, it's, you know, the requirements and compliances under federal and state laws continue to pose many challenges for school districts, and certainly not just ours, but across the Commonwealth. That being said, we have made some progress in trying to lower those costs. One example is increasing staffing. We recently increased staffing at the high school for a new teacher and a couple of aides for a program that allowed 6 students to stay in district and not go out of district for their educational services. I don't need to tell you that at a cost that could run anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 per student, that we saved considerable amount of money by hiring new teachers and staff for these students. We look to do that again this year by expanding on that. We do have needs in our district that would require students to go out of district. We think we can service them better in town, in district, in our schools, with our staff, rather than send them out of the district. On page 8, you just see revenue offsets. They include federal and state grant revenues. They total right around 1.9 million. It's a considerable amount of money. It's a considerable amount of effort to acquire these grants and keep up with them year after year. What we find, as you know, is typical with grant funding, is they get cut annually, and you have to make up for that in your budget. But otherwise, I think we are very diligent in acquiring just under $2 million in grants, which are critical to the operation of our budget. And of course, we're also very fortunate to have the benefit of groups like the Webster Educational Foundation, PTO organizations, music and athletic booster clubs. They all do a great job in supporting our students with their efforts. So to give you on page 8 a quick programming budget overview, this is what the budget would look like as we discussed under 3 new schools. It's broken out under the 3 schools, special education and then district administration. And as you can see, the proposed budget is just under 12%. The number may be startling, but frankly, I thought it was going to be a lot more when we started this initiative. And 12%, although a high number in terms of what we're used to proposing, I think is a realistic number for what we're trying to achieve. And then the operating budget summary on page 9 includes our foundation budget, local contribution, Chapter 70 state aid, Schedule 19. All of these are still subject to appropriation. Although we have numbers out of the governor's budget, we know that that portion of our revenue will not be determined until it follows the processes on Beacon Hill. And typically, you won't even get the final approval until June 30th, which will be well after our budget meetings. On Chapter 7, page 10, Chapter 70 trends. And this is a very revealing document because it gets to the core of foundation budget and what is typically going across the Commonwealth right now with our Foundation Review Commission. Foundation budget was based on the idea of leveling the playing field by giving each district the appropriate amount of money that would be required to give each student an adequate education. And they use a formula that I would say Goodwill Hunting would have a hard time figuring out, never mind your typical school business administrator. But that being said, they come up with a number that says should provide an adequate education for every student in your district. And I am here to tell you that doesn't happen. And why do I know it doesn't happen? Because if you look at this chart, the far left column, state percent over or under foundation, you'll see that the state average of funding schools in the Commonwealth across all 352 towns is 19%. So the average district in the Commonwealth funds their budgets at 19% over the foundation number. Now in Webster, our number is 7.5%. We are very fortunate and very appreciative of the fact that the town has invested in our school district at 7.5% over foundation budget. I don't know what we would do without that. But that being said, in an area in times where you are asked to compete with other districts in the state to meet assessments and targets, it makes it very difficult for a district that's 7% over budget to compete with a district that's 19% or more over budget. That's where the challenge is. And it certainly is for us. Page 11 just shows our professional staffing. It shows what our current is in FY15 and what was proposed in FY16. And the last page on that document, page 12, shows the new positions that would be added to a FY16 budget if it were to be funded with 3 new schools. So that kind of reflects our commitment to meet our strategic plan. That was the budget that was proposed to school committee. We obviously are very aware of the financial constraints across the state and the community, and know that our budgets are, you know, living and breathing documents that need to be adjusted as we move on, and that's what we plan on doing. The second handout, and again, this is kind of just a tutorial on Chapter 78 and Foundation Budget. I'm not gonna get into it. It'll make some good bedroom reading for you if you really want to snooze off some night, I'm sure. But again, I think the last few pages, which are 9, 10, 11, and 12, kind of give you, again, the synopsis that I was just talking about. Districts who spend in excess of their spending requirements. Districts who spend above foundation budget. Our regional allocation, and then other district comparisons in southern Worcester County, which I think is also very revealing. And then some budget scenarios, which include our current budget as proposed, and then what the budgets would look like if they needed to be cut, and what that could mean dollar-wise for our district and for our community. So that's just kind of synopsis of how we got to where we are today. I understand at the 3-board meeting that I think we were all in agreement that we think the school district is heading in the right direction. We truly believe that. We have a school committee and a superintendent that are committed to that, and I think we have some very qualified personnel in place to get the job done. But unfortunately, you know, we, as a lot of communities have been living year to year under the constraints of 2.5 and state funding, and from year to year, balancing our budgets, trying to maintain level services, and, in a nutshell, not having the ability to improve, just trying to stay the course as to what we're doing. And we're doing that, and I think we're improving. We're not improving as fast as we would like to. There's a lot of work left to be done, but to do so, there's also an effort that would be needed as far as the positions you see. And the new positions on that page 12 are not just critical to instruction, but they're also, again, critical to the whole support of our campuses when we think about bringing some secretaries back, bringing some custodians back to levels that are appropriate for the square footage of our building. So, I didn't mean to get into a lecture or use up a lot of your time, but I think what we all agreed at the three-board meeting was that, our community is at a crossroads right now. We have done all we can to live under the constraints of 2.5, and I think we've done a tremendous job. But what we've done to accomplish that is to cut some personnel down to what I would call bare bones levels. And there isn't any more of those positions to cut. So once we start balancing our budgets under the constraints of the revenues we have now, I can assure you that we will begin to start affecting classroom instruction. That will happen in FY16. It's something that we've avoided all these many years, but I don't think there is any way that we can avoid it at this time. So we had discussed the possibility of enhancing revenues. I can assure you, the state is not showing up on a white horse with a bag full of money. That ain't happening. So it's really unto us as a community, I think, to decide, what direction do we want to go in? And I only speak for the school side, but I certainly know on the municipal side, there are a lot of things that we have cut there as well. And it would be, I think, appropriate to start to think about how can we start to replace some of the things that we've lost over the years through the constraints of limited state funding and 2.5. We've lived under 2.5 now for 35 years. We're one of the few communities in the Commonwealth that can say that. And I bring that up as a point of discussion. I know that we discussed it at the three-board meeting. I think we were all in agreement at that meeting that we need to have a community discussion about where do we want to go. As our town administrator has said several times, what do you want your community to look like? What do you want your school district to look like? And it's to the point now that we could start to have those serious discussions about where do we want to proceed from here.
I think if I could, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, 4 years ago, 4 fiscal years ago was a really bad down cycle for us.
2010, 2011.
And that was a very bad year. We had the unusual scenario where there were 2 retirements, and I think we had an additional person that left town service. So we took 3 attrition hits. It's a different formula if it's purely a layoff, and you've got to account for the unemployment component. School department lost 25 positions, and I don't think you've ever built back to that pre-layoff roster in my mind. I don't know that you've gotten back there. So we've been through that cycle. It's not a particularly beneficial cycle for anybody. And I think to have a candid conversation about what the community wants to look like and where we want to be, part of that discussion weighs heavily upon tax burden. It's no secret. So I would encourage anyone, and we have the data, to look at the Webster tax burden relative to other communities. And I think the community has to have a very candid conversation with itself. And we're happy to get slugged in the nose because that's the usual reaction to an override. But after you slug us, certainly look at the data. That's what we would ask. $100,000 on the tax levy is $14 on a home valued at $200,000. So $14, and that's for the year. There's a lot of misperception about when you get that bill, the December, January bill, about what that actually means. So $14 for a 12-month cycle is what it costs for $100,000 on the tax levy on a home of $200,000. I don't know where people shop. I need to go where they shop when they're so outraged to think that we may have to get up above the existing levy limit constraints. So that's the number. So I look forward to having that genuine, honest conversation with people. We are at the low end of the burden. That is a fact. People could do the math on their own. We're happy to provide you the data that was given to us. It's not our own data. We put the data in a way that you can look at communities our size statewide. We take a lot of pride in the progress that we've made with nuisance property. In my time here, I felt that that was the #1 challenge that we wanted to address. That work, we hope, continues. You know, I think it would be very detrimental for the community to take any pressure off the momentum that we built. I think the school department, I've said this for 3 years, it was a very good day for this community when Dr. Malkus joined the team. A very good day for this community. And I think the expectations of the town are a little different than they were a few years ago, and we take a lot of pride in that. This is unfortunately a scenario, and there were quotes in other communities, very well-managed communities, where they simply said, as Mr. Avlis has alluded to, the state's not showing up to bail us out of our trouble. That's not gonna happen. You know, those days are gone. I'm actually a fan of Proposition 2.5, but if anyone wants to have an honest dialogue and say $480,000 in new money, yet $200,000 health insurance costs, what could be $60,000 in workers' comp costs, and then $70,000 in school transportation, $126,000 in Bay Path, I think it's significantly higher than that on retirement costs. Just a few select items, a veteran's cost $140,000. Just those items greatly exceed and outstrip the new money that's derived from that. So it's probably time for a very honest discussion about how we move forward. We take a lot of pride in being part of the Webster team, and you know, we want the community to take pride in itself, and frankly, have higher expectations that we'll deliver the services we deliver, but it's got to be a partnership that the resources certainly drive the process. I mean, the resources have to be there. So we've got, I think, about 10 weeks until we target that mid-June timeframe now to give us the extra time. I know that seems to rankle some feathers. That's worked very well for us. I think 3 out of the last 4 or 4 out of the last 5 years, we've extended that annual town meeting. It's given us a tremendous enhancement to coming up with a better product for the following fiscal year. It's just enhanced the brainstorming. We've had better decision-making, better numbers from the state. So I think long ago, I had put on the table that would be the likely scenario for this year as well for timing. So that's 10 weeks from tonight. I can go through departmental budgets later if you want. I mean, you know, for just purely departments, you've got, again, we're working through a regional configuration for the police dispatchers. There's a material increase there. The fire department, as you know, we made a big change in terms of stipends, but not necessarily stipends for mandatory service, just to be part of the department. That changed, so there's no more stipend, it's purely hourly. You know, in this business, as an aside, wouldn't it be great if you could attach, like in the private sector, the productivity enhancements as well? Because I will tell you, the fire department's taking a small increase upward, but the productivity output was probably 3 times higher than what it used to be, just because the configuration wasn't there. No reflection on prior leadership. So that looks like an increase. Productivity, you know, cost per units of improvement in this community is far lower. The Department of Public Works, we've been carrying 1 possible additional body this year because it is so difficult getting through the season, all 4 seasons, with the level of the crew we have size-wise. That probably won't pass muster much longer in my draft budget. The senior center, we're carrying an additional $40,000 in staffing issues, if that, some of that needs to survive. But the largest increase that will still stand on its own will be that veteran service increase. So that's it. I mean, you're looking at a bunch of departments that are virtually level funded. Nobody's feathering their nests. This year, as the board is aware, we've settled most of our contracts for 1.5%. That's as low as you will see statewide, I believe, in the in the teacher contracts to put it out there. This is the year that they're at 1.5%. No one's feathering their nest. You could look statewide, you know, a small bump every year is a fact of life in municipalities. Show me the municipality that doesn't do that, I'd be happy to take a look at it. I know we've taken zeros here in Webster, more than one. So we try to be as modest as we can. But if we were to try to set a budget today, without any other changes, with the school department at that zero-based budget number, which was the 12%, we are close to $2 million over our levy limit. We're about $1.7 million. And that's, again, I have been here 6 years, and I have routinely every year said, you will never hear me say the sky is falling, our job is to fix it. This is the more challenging year that I've seen, about $1.7 million. We could back off on that, possibly some, with what is now a couple of pieces of information on our insurance costs. Again, that's the full zero-based budgeting, 12% approach for the school department, and you know, where that, I guess, comes to a final adopted budget number, probably, I'm guessing there'd be some changes from what we can deliver a product for this year. It's always bleak at this time of year. It's very easy to make these numbers look off the charts, but this comes with an awful lot of work and forethought about what the community needs to move forward, and a realistic approach to this. Again, about $1.7 million. That's with some mainly being a stable community, but also the reality of taking on additional capacity in some of our buildings and some of our operations. So as we move forward, by statute, the Board of Selectmen are the only body that's allowed to put an override on the ballot if we decide that's the direction you're going to want to move in. The free cash certification this year, which probably 2/3 of which will end up going to snow and ice. Our free cash certification for the general fund is $425,363. So that, likewise, state aid is not going to bail us out, nor would be previous year savings. And using that, to no surprise, introduces a whole another challenge for FY17 as well. So we're still working through some changes in health insurance, which is another whole night that we would discuss that. Again, working through some insurance changes, or what could be a better environment for workers' comp, but it's a big number. We know it's a big number. You know, it's something where this is a big year for us, opening up, as I say, full year's worth of operation on our side with the police station, senior center coming online. It's a much enhanced operation over there. I can't imagine what it would cost to build that senior center if we were to do it at prevailing wage. I mean, we look forward to having a ribbon cutting at the senior center very soon, because it is a stunning facility, which we have spent $0 on for a brand new senior center. But again, we've got to look at the staffing component. So I don't know if that addresses the Park Ave piece as well. I mean, it's a gorgeous facility, and we want to make it functional, and we want to make it a world-class elementary school. So with that comes the staffing needs.
Staffing and maintenance. We've always been blamed for not maintaining our buildings properly because we don't have the money, allegedly, to do all of that. The argument used to be that people would move out of Webster because if they were going to purchase something in Webster, the first thing they ask is, how is your school system? And that's been that way for years. And I think when you're trying to revitalize what you can, we're pumping a lot of money into these buildings, and also for your administration and teachers, faculty, and even your custodians, and to try to maintain these buildings. And I know at Bartlett, I mean, Mr. Avalos and I talked about Park Avenue and what was this and that, and when we were kids, that was the state of the art. Well, so was Noah, but it's come a long way. And again, you have a lot of restrictions today as far as what the state wants you to do, what you can do, what they'll give you, what the town can do or can't do. And we use the O word. I've always been to that point where you leave that to the voters to see what they would say. I'm not one to say that you should or you shouldn't. Leave it up to the voters, put it in their hands, and hopefully if they can see the handwriting on the wall, and if you're talking about $14 a year per 200,000, am I correct?
A $200,000 home.
Right.
With 100,000 on the levy. So that's, and if we were to raise an additional $100,000 over our existing tax levy, that would cost a homeowner $14 for the year for that additional 100,000, with your home being valued at 200,000.
So it's a little over $1 a month, if you look at it
So-
that way.
So that, depending upon.
I don't like to use the phrase "just a cup of coffee," because I enjoy my cup of coffee.
Well, and again, that's on 100,000. And if we're going to look at addressing what would be a very difficult year through the override process, that would be per 100,000. But, again, we all know that it's an expensive world out there. We all shop in town, and we know that. Likewise, it's expensive to operate a municipality, and as our costs go up, we'd like to maintain the stability and continue to see the improvement with our operation that we've seen over the last several years.
But I think it's also in our best interest to attract more people to come to Webster, or that is to purchase something to get them on the tax rolls, and/or attract business, which is not taking away from, that's adding to the tax roll without putting any burden on the school also. That's a gigantic burden, and we see a lot of empty places, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe we should start some kind of committee on that to see if anyone's interested, to talk to a few people that are in that realm of business, to try to attract business, which generates revenue. That's my opinion, but maybe my colleagues.
To the chair, with the override discussion, would it make sense prior to the town meeting for the Board of Selectmen to call a public hearing to kind of educate the public on Proposition 2.5 override? That way we can get some of the discussion out of the way rather than having it night of on town meeting.
I think it's a great idea.
And we can invite school committee and finance committee to that.
Probably want to schedule a follow-up with our tripartite group with the school committee and the finance committee. I thought it was very helpful to have the school leadership there, the administrative team as well, and we can do the same on our end, and I think it's a great idea.
This is clearly a complex issue that's gonna take some time to sink in with the voters, and I think if we can explain it in simple terms, instead of just a quick packet before town meeting and there you go to vote, it gives a little more discussion amongst their families, I think, as well.
And I can't stress enough, no one's feathering their nests. I mean, 1.5% increases. The changes we made in health insurance, we've made changes every single year. For the last 3 years, we lived with a very aggressive agreement that was set up 3 years ago. So in other words, my first, second, and third year here, we made changes to health insurance. And those are changes that cost the employees more money. These were takeaways. And then 3 years ago, we had a major change, the board will recall. You adopted that section of the law that allows you to go to the GIC, the State Group Insurance Commission. You adopted that provision, I think so-called the 19B provision of Chapter 32, I think. With that, we set up that PEC committee, the Public Employee Committee, and that was a very beneficial agreement financially. So we haven't had the increases in health insurance. Now this year, the trust fund is not, it's been gaining steam overall, but this year the trust fund is starting to go in the wrong direction, and we're gonna have to have an increase in our appropriation. The rates, health insurance rates will be going up, and at the same time, health insurance rates will be going up for employees. We're again going to look at plan design changes, which would mean the employees are spending a lot more money on health insurance. So this is not a protecting our own, feathering our nest scenario whatsoever. We've taken those hard steps. The school department laid off 25 people. We've carried empty slots. Going through that cycle again is not beneficial to the community, because it is a vicious cycle. People don't want to be part of a community where the school system is going in the wrong direction, or your police, fire, highway, water, sewer, or town hall are going in the wrong direction either, and libraries. So, for that reason, I think we have to have the honest dialogue. if we don't make the case and people vote no, and we have a very, very unfortunate reality of making the numbers work within that levy limit amount, no one's going to be happy with that, including those that say it's a great idea to live within the levy, and no one's gonna like the results, but I think at least people have had a fair opportunity to literally vote on what the future of their town's gonna look like.
Through the chair, I have a few questions for the members here. Now, I'm going to preface this with, please don't take my questions as critiquing what you have here, but I'm merely asking them for my knowledge. The first question I had, let me make sure I'm in the right packet here, hold on. If you look at page 9 of the school budget page, under Bartlett, it's saying the change is actually down compared to the other schools. I was wondering what actually fosters that change in such an amount?
Again, it goes back to the grade reconfiguration. Bartlett is losing 2 grades.
Oh, so the teachers under that budget get moved to the other
Right.
middle school?
That's
Okay.
why the percentage of changes, I think, that you see at Park Ave Middle School, Bartlett, they're a little skewed.
They might be inflated because of the movement and staff.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah, because of the transfers of the grades.
So then that segues into my next question with the amount of FY16 new budget positions on the back page. I was kind of looking for a general overview of why you would be requesting so many and just what capacity they would be filling in. Is this merely filling in the cuts from 5 years ago, or are there other transitional roles that they're fulfilling?
Both.
Yeah. Okay.
It's both. I mean, if you see support staff like administrative assistants, secretaries, or custodians, and other types of support, those would be in positions that have been cut in the past. You'll see at Park Ave that we are adding positions that are required in an effort to utilize the facility that we now have. Obviously, we are privileged to have all of this technology now installed in our new school. So if you see a new computer teacher listed, a STEM teacher, an information literacy specialist, these are all positions that support technology and IT support in each school. We were hoping to have an aide that would be IT support in each school to be able to support the teachers in their classrooms as they provide instructions to their student using technology. Because as we all know, technology has a way of being erratic sometimes. And support people are critical to not only support the instruction, but to support the equipment as well.
Looking back at Greg over there shaking his head.
Yeah.
And that, I think he has done a good
So-
job to that capacity.
And they have. So those are the types of things. If you see things like grade 2 teacher, that was cut last year. Nurses assistants at Park Ave, we're gonna see an influx of students there that we haven't seen before. And these are the little guys. They're pre-K to 4. They utilize a lot of our health services during the course of a school year. And adjustment counselors, and I can't speak to the volume of their professional work, but I can assure you that the professionals in each of those buildings could tell you that we have some students with some real needs in our district, and it is imperative that we provide them with the professional help and assistance that they need to progress through our system as the state is looking for us to do. And with special ed and the Bartlett positions, I think, again, those are either compliance issues that we need to fund because we need to comply, or, again, as with Bartlett, they're positions that we're adding in order to save money. We're not sending 6 or 7
Doing it
students out
in-house.
of district, we're
Right.
doing it in-house.
So, Mr. Avlis, in your opinion, if the voters decide that the big O word isn't for them, these don't go through, what would you anticipate classroom sizes being? Are we really looking at having lecture halls now instead of focused curriculum?
Well, I'm not gonna
Speculate.
I can't say right now. I can tell you that the school committee has already charged us with, go to the budget now. Let's see what a 6% looks like in case this 12 doesn't go through. That would be cutting the budget in half. We would literally be cutting about 2/3 of these new positions. 1/3 of them have to stay. So if we're cutting if we're leaving 1/3 of these new positions in, and we're trying to maintain level services throughout our district, then that means other staff has got to be examined. And I think that's where we start to affect the instructional services of our classrooms. Whether it's through the instructional assistance that teachers get with their students, for those needy students who need small group instruction, or even one-to-one assistance, or whether it's just increasing classroom sizes. I don't know. That hasn't actually been determined yet. I can tell you that we have, and I'm glad Mr. Jolder brought up a public hearing, because we're having a public hearing next Tuesday. The school committee meeting is actually scheduled for next Tuesday night at Park Ave in the new cafetorium. And we'll have a public hearing there to discuss what our budget is going to look like. And we're working towards those numbers with administration right now. So we'll have a pretty good feel by Tuesday night as to what we're kind of looking at, if we need to cut our budget to 6 or 5% or 4% or whatever it might be, to give the community at least a brief overview of what does it look like? What is that going to mean for our education services?
Thank you, Mr. Avalos. So I'm wondering if we should be looking to essentially do a joint meeting, if you wouldn't mind, at the Park Ave School with us as well. It sounds like that's the direction that we're looking to move in, if that's all right with Mr. Jolder.
Well,
So for,
prior to
not
having
the school budget hearing, but prior to it, but if we move forward with an
With a-
override vote, we'd have a public hearing. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, yeah, I think actually we're talking about two different things now, so,
Because I think it would make sense to probably have it at the high school, is my guess, for seating issues. We
For
certainly can
yeah.
have it here. I'm guessing we would outstrip this. The auditorium I absolutely love. I don't know if anyone that sits in the audience for more than an hour loves the auditorium as much as I do, but for seating comfort, you might want to be in the high
So-
school.
So if we were to do a public hearing to discuss the override, we'd probably want to wait until after you've had your meeting on the 14th.
Yeah, by charter, we're required
Right,
to
to do-
hold a public
Okay.
hearing prior to any vote on our budget. And since we are heading towards the Maytown meeting, even though we don't plan on approving a budget at that time, we need to be prepared in
Right.
case the community wants to vote and approval at that time. So we need to have our public hearing regardless in order to comply with the charter.
So would Monday, April 27th, would that be a good time for us to hold the public hearing up at the
Well,
high
I think
school?
it would be a great idea to hold a public hearing for that, and the discussion about what an override might look like could be part of that. So I think it's important to have the public hearing in the event that, unfortunately, things may fail. And if we have to actually explain to people what your community might look like, that part of the dialogue is gonna be very important as well. So, yeah, I think it only makes sense to have the hearing,
Okay.
and we'll put the budget up there. I mean, it's, I'm more than happy to, I'll have this in a much more presentable format, but anyone wants to see a copy of where we're at on the departmental piece, and that's our real discretionary. I mean, that's the part
Right.
that we spend. In the old days, this was the budget. This is, I love one-page cheat sheets. So all your departmental spending, 19 years of this in public service, the first 10 years, I think, was all about what the departmental spending was. And the last 10 years, or thereabouts, however that splits, it's been all about fixed cost. I mean, the department, this is when you have a taxpayer that has a valid gripe, is when the individual departments are building up a head of steam, and you're looking at double-digit increases, and that's not the case here.
Right.
It's simply not. The school department is absolutely going in a very positive direction, and they have a gorgeous new school that we want to take full advantage of.
So, so do you want to make a motion that we schedule a public hearing for Monday, April,
Is that an
20
off night for us, do we know, Courtney? It is. That's an off night, okay, well, yeah, that's better. And the Patriots Day is the 20th, right, so.
and then that would,
That should be an open, so that's a good night for us then, right?
yeah, and then that would give us
Do we want to do that here, or do you want to do that at the high
the
school?
high school,
Good, and we'll have
and that'll
a
give us,
presentation ready to go.
because then the fall, yeah, 7 PM, because then the following Monday is the 4th, which is elections, and then we have town meeting on the 11th. So that would give you 2 weeks in between.
So you made a motion,
Second.
second. Any other discussion? Courtney, pull the board, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Chairman. Stavros.
Thank you.
Thank you. Town Administrators Report.
Well, in the spirit of passing over, Mr. Chairman, we might want to have Mr. Charpentier come up and,
Okay.
you want to get that, knock that off? It's a long time to wait for a desk, isn't it? Oh, well, then sit down.
Well, if I could, I would say waiting 2 weeks and seeing this number change from a 7 to a 4 is pretty good in my book.
We wait 4 more weeks, he's gonna owe us money. Right? Think about it. Do you have that, do we have that sheet in the packet?
Yeah, I believe
Sorry about
the
that.
Yep.
updated material list is in the packet.
So
We,
it's-
we sought some quotes from the Scratch and Dent Emporium of WB Mason. They filled out the same exact sheet of materials, and like Mr. Starzak said, cut the cost almost $3,000. A lot of the big ticket items have been cut either in half or down to a third of the original cost. Be aware the existing equipment that's in the water department includes one file cabinet. One of the work areas is a hand-me-down countertop that somebody brought from home, put on a couple pieces of composition board. So there is not a lot to move, but what is available to be moved is being moved.
Well, I think this is a big improvement. Glad to see it. And I was going to say, I know there was a little discussion on laminate, maybe not lasting, but last I checked, I think this desk is laminate, and I'm willing to bet it's probably about as old as I am. So, you know, especially if we're going to have the
We don't have DPW laborers banging into it every minute either. I know you're rough on equipment, but we're not here that often.
Hey, at the same token of that, though, I've had a $500 toolbox the last 8 years that lasted. So, I mean, regardless, I think when we're going into a year looking and possibly doing an override, saving a couple bucks here, and if it doesn't last, then I guess we reassess it thereon. But it looks good in my book.
Okay.
We're gonna move forward with that then?
Absolutely.
Good.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's all available? That's all good to go. So while you're here, and I wasn't gonna do this to you, but we had a very good stretch for Rusty Water. I mean, the
Okay.
occasional,
I'm glad you brought it up.
the occasional flare-up is going to happen. I'm always pleased to report that we have a good handle on why. Now, we did have one, a larger one than we've seen in a while, and
Yeah,
as of this morning, we weren't sure of what hiccup in the system. I mean, it's as simple as a small piece of rust breaks free in a pipe, and it could be as simple as that. I mean, we had scenarios when we were working on pump station 3, change of flows, change of velocity, really nothing operational that we foresaw that.
There was an incident on Saturday. First call came in a little before 5 PM, last call around 7:30 PM. Dispatch contacted myself and the water superintendent. We had staff out there half an hour after the first call. It was in the School Street, 5th and Myrtle areas. We spoke to other department heads. We don't have a reason for the anomaly. Generally, a rapid drawing of water causes disturbance in the water velocities, stirs up some of the sediment. On a Saturday afternoon, I don't know, maybe somebody opened a standpipe in one of their buildings to wash down the floor and didn't know what they were doing or what have you. I don't know what the cause was, but there was an anomaly with discolored water. We are scheduling our spring flushing. That's going to be put up on the web shortly. We're finalizing the date. It's likely going to be the week of April 21st, probably start on the 22nd, that Wednesday after the long weekend. That's our goal right now, to finish up by the end of May.
There was also a bunch of complaints as far as the chlorine. I don't know if you added to that or what happened with that, but I know there was a number of hits where people were complaining about the odor of chlorine, strong odor.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, our residual testing is every 2 weeks throughout the distribution system. We run typically 1 part per million at the source, and the DEP requirement is that we have 0.3 parts per million at the extremities of the system. They're generally, it deteriorates as you go down the system, so at the end of Thompson Road, you'll have 0.3. Up at Station 3, you'll have 1.0. Chlorine is a interesting chemical. When it's very low concentration, you smell it just about as much as you do when it's a higher concentration. So 0.3 will smell like a 1.0 to you.
If I could though, we didn't
There
have
was
a need
no-
to do any tweaking in our system with the
No.
chlorine, right? So the
No.
same same rate of feeding and mixing.
Same as always, yeah.
Not sure. I mean, if they hadn't called yet, then we suggest what we've been saying now for a good
there was
year.
a-
Just call the department, let us know.
If there's a large draw in the system, the water will run through the pipes more rapidly, so the 1.0 chlorinated water that leaves the well house will end up at your faucet quicker, so it may not lose its concentration as rapidly. But that usually takes a fire incident to occur.
Yeah, because I'll say I noticed it too. Even yesterday, I think, it was
Yeah.
hotel in Mexico City strong. So,
I hope not.
yeah. Well, maybe
I've
not
been in a
that bad.
hotel, I've been in, what was it,
Compared to
Mexico
what
City?
the
but-
residents of Webster were used
Plus,
to.
it wasn't a very nice hotel either, come to think of it. I was a lot younger then.
But, yeah, it was.
Please, you know what,
very
just,
strong.
I mean, what we ask is call us, because if people are, people have something they recognize as different, we don't know, then, and we had no changes on our end. We
Yeah.
don't have the reason to think that there's an issue unless we get a call.
Yeah, I want to echo that I urge the public to call the Water Division. Let us know when it occurred and where it occurred. We're logging every single location and call that comes in. It's important data. Without the data, we can't tell what happened where and to apply valuable dollars efficiently.
So we are going to embark on the third, I guess, what we call an enhanced unidirectional flushing program. We're embarking on the third one. Great progress from the first to the second, great progress. I'm guessing that's kind of diminishing marginal returns. We're gonna see improvement, probably not the amount of improvement, although hopefully it's not as much improvement we need in the system. But any sediment in the lines cleaned up much faster the second go-round. So we'll be doing that again twice this year.
Yep.
So, didn't mean to sandbag you. You were here.
I always expect water comments.
Anything else you want to throw in?
I think I'm good, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Board
Thank
members.
you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And now for our town administrator's
Yes.
report.
Much anticipated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I mentioned our free cash certifications have been, their review and final certification has been completed by the Department of Revenue. The general fund free cash certification was $425,363. The water fund free cash certification was $1,627,430, and the sewer free cash certification was $568,000 even, which is unusual. I actually double-checked that to make sure. The sewer fund looks as though it took a precipitous drop, but we actually used quite a bit of free cash for project-oriented needs in the last year. And our financial team, we congratulate Linda Slaughter on her retirement. We have really a lot of the ongoing type work in our financial groups. We had a very in-depth meeting with our Blue Cross and Shield representative this week, with our in-house Blue Cross consultant, with our external Blue Cross, Blue Shield consultant, GBS, and we're working towards that renewal. We do live in a day and age, it's most unfortunate, where changes in health insurance plan design are a fact of life, and I know that rankles a lot of feathers amongst our employees, and it's certainly no reflection on anything other than this is the day and age we live in, where plan design changes in health insurance are certainly just a fact of life. So that process, as we move towards a renewal, I'm not sure if the plan design changes will be ready for this renewal cycle, which is next month in June. We may be looking at something where we split that process up. I don't anticipate the same magnitude of changes that we incorporated 3 years ago. I don't envision that. I do envision half to a third of that. But to let people, to work the process correctly at the state level, and to make sure that all of our groups understand how this affects their health insurance benefit, we're not looking for a renewal this open enrollment cycle. Excuse me, we're not looking for the change in plan design for this renewal, this open enrollment cycle of May, June. We're likely looking for something early in the late summer, early fall. The assessor's office, again, working through budget estimates and managing their office. The tax collector's office, ongoing collection efforts. That's a pretty stable work environment in our collector's office and what they need to work through month to month. The town clerk, again, preparing for town meeting and election season. The DPW updates, we did have the breakout rest problem. You know, the prior event was a flow test on Harris Street. I mean, we don't think there's any relation there. We, again, for this most recent one, we're not sure what a triggering event was. I mean, I think we usually get a good handle on most. It could be, as we say, something as simple as a piece of rust flakes off in a pipe. And we continue with that. The first model we had for the flushing program was called a static model, and that's the model we've been using. But we're working towards that dynamic flow model with Ty and Bond. When Mike Schrader was in, we talked about that. So we'll have a much better handle to look in the system and see if something changed unrelated to what we do, something changed within the system that had triggered, you know, a slug of rust moving throughout the infrastructure, throughout the pipes and our infrastructure. On the sewer department, your board's aware of that clarifier and the kind of that rack and pinion system, the gear mechanism at the bottom of the tank. We tried to beat the weather last fall. There was a big time delay on some materials unrelated to the bidding process that we had been in charge of. So thankfully, other than the flurries yesterday, it looks like we might actually be leaving the winter season, albeit slowly, opening day for the Red Sox. So on paper, the summer is here. So we will reconvene again the landfill leachate system, which is that system where we have to pump and process the runoff that is hitting our landfill. And the other project is the clarifying tank. So those had been put on hold due to the winter, and we will again start those projects up. The highway department, the first effort of spring for a lot, I guess, is the baseball season, but for us, it's when the sweeper gets out there. This was a tough season. I know the community has what feels like an awful lot of trash. You know, I think it gets out of the recycling buckets, and what does get kicked around gets stuck under the snowbanks. So I guess we would respectfully want two things. We hope our residents will tell us those real problem areas. I think we have a good handle just from being around and out and about in the community. We would love to know some of the areas that need some more immediate attention. This is one of the tougher times for our highway crew. We are in, once that weather breaks, the anticipation jumps quickly that we're gonna have our parks and playgrounds cleaned up and be ready for Memorial Day and get all the ball fields ready. This is, I think, with extreme weather, this is just gonna be a very challenging year. For me, I really like to see the streets and sideways and sidewalks get cleaned up and free of debris and rubbish, and that's just gonna take some time this year. But we have begun. The compost facility opening day for us, again, wasn't baseball, but opening day for the compost facility was today. So just to get the schedule out there, so people are aware, Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays, 8 AM to 2 PM. And the first and third Saturdays, 8 AM to noon. So we want to mark that down on the calendar. That's our compost schedule. Under new business, it's also on the agenda, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to segue into this proof of residency issue. So I've been working with the gentleman who has provided us tax bills, vehicle registrations, and census data that shows he is with absolute certainty a Webster resident, but we routinely deny commercial vehicles the sticker. And that is driven by the compost piece, because the commercial vehicles, and this will, get me some hate mail, but the commercial vehicles were the biggest offenders of having trucks that were there 4 days a week. And I don't know how big their lawn is, but if you're cutting your grass 4 days a week, that's some lawn. So this is a position that's been taken for a very long time on not allowing or not providing sales to commercial vehicles. That's really been driven, again, by the composting program. I think in a circumstance such as this gentleman, he's a boater, he has a private vehicle that's registered with the company out of state, and he would simply like to enjoy a benefit that Webster residents have, which is getting a boat sticker for our annual rate, and be able to launch his boat down at the beach. So, I don't know if there's a way that this can work where the compost facility is not changed, that operation continues the way it is. But if you only have one vehicle and you can prove residency, or if you have one vehicle that can tow your boat, and you produce a tax bill, and your driver's license, and your registration, and your census data all show that you are a Webster resident, it seems like it'd be decent to have a way that that person can get the same benefit as a resident that has a private vehicle instead of a work vehicle.
That vehicle must have commercial plates, I would assume. So,
I believe it does. I think it's the out-of-state issue as well. So you're right. It could be two issues with that
I
one.
would think if it has commercial plates and we grant it the beach sticker, anybody working compost sees something with a commercial plate comes in, they know that's a no-no. It would be pretty easy then for him to get the beach sticker through us, as long as those working compost keep an eye on the license plates to set up a red flag, because I know there isn't any different beach stickers I know of.
I think this gentleman's on board. Now, this is, again, who knows about the next person, but I think this gentleman's on board that this is beach access only. Because I think Mr. Bizzetti's pretty firm that the opening up to commercial vehicles is just a nightmare. Yeah, it's just a lot more, now you need two people, because one spends the day arguing, so you need two people to manage the program.
Well, in that capacity, I would make a motion for a special exception for this gentleman's beach sticker for beach access only.
And with providing, I think, because, if we're gonna set a precedent, it's always good to make it clear that we can live with certain conditions. I think you need to provide what this gentleman's provided.
Absolutely.
Tax bills, driver's license, registration, census data, the persons have.
Then along that same note, I know I've had some questions. Is the board willing to look into anything for municipal employees who work for the town that happen to live out of state? For example, some members of the fire department, rescue, that would like to take advantage of the beach for training exercises to do scuba diving on their own. I don't know, that was a question that was posed to me. I don't know what the board or.
And we haven't. I think in my time here, a couple people have asked if they could get a sticker, and I said, no.
So would that be on it?
Because we've never had ground rules, if you will, for it.
Right.
So if the board wants to entertain that, I think I would just say it's an employee benefit as opposed to saying it's.
The employee
If
benefit.
we're gonna say someone's training and then they show up with a
Yeah.
picnic basket and 2 kids and someone
So
else is
maybe-
gonna say they really weren't training, I think if we're gonna open that up for municipal employees, I think you just open
So-
it up.
so maybe,
That's the board's decision.
Have them contact you directly and do it as an employee benefit.
After the board decides how you would like to manage
Absolutely.
that, contact me directly, absolutely.
Certainly.
Selectman Jola. The moment after you decide what the municipality would like to have for ground rules.
So,
I
So-
think we come full circle also, you have former employees, retired employees that may have.
People we didn't hire.
I'm not even gonna go down that road.
But, you know, you're right. I mean, that's, I
But-
know sometimes
and
I
then,
look
but
like
a big,
you know,
another big
difficult,
concern of
but-
mine too is those folks that may have, for handicap under the ADA and so forth and so on. There's something else to consider. And I know I'm part of the ADA committee, and we've even talked about even for them to get some access down to the water. Not saying they're gonna drive the car down there, but, there are other things that we're looking into, to do that sort of thing. But, so we have to think about that real strong too. Or the former employee that just goes down with her husband every once in a while just to have a sandwich and a cup of coffee, just to get out of the house.
I think right,
You know.
I love that you said it, so I'm not being called difficult tonight. I mean, that's exactly it. There's so many iterations that you could open up the door for, and I think that's why, unfortunately, more often than not, it looks like you're playing the heavy, because we say no an awful lot in this business, an awful lot. But that's why, because there's not enough staff and different colored stickers to go through 100
Correct.
different iterations of a kindness that we would love to show, don't get me
Right.
wrong, but it's not something that we can adequately set up a program for, and then as soon as someone doesn't get the same treatment, it
Correct.
feels like they're getting slighted somehow, so.
So, I'll throw my hat into this ring, because I do appreciate part of where Selectman Joel is coming from, that, you know, I feel when you work for a business, usually there's certain perks that come along with working there, and I think, you know, our town offers quite a few perks. So at least in the case of active employees, I could see, I mean, I know that we have a lot of, you know, probably employees from surrounding towns such as Oxford and places not too far that probably would want to enjoy our beach and lake at the residence rate. So, you know, I would make a motion that, you know, they receive the regular rate if they are active current employees. If you want to go along with that.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Then you can be the heavy.
I'm already heavy.
Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
I also had a previous motion,
Oh.
which kind of, just a heads up.
go right ahead.
I believe that motion was for the exemption of this gentleman with the commercial
Oh,
plate.
yes.
Provided that,
Had the
setting this
proper proof.
precedent, we received the proof, was it three?
Twice.
Three forms of proof we have? so
Three
far?
should do it,
Yeah,
yeah.
so 3 forms of proof, and it excludes compost, and they need special permitting through us.
And I'm glad you said it, because I think the issue also was out of state, so that was the other part of that
His
wrinkle.
vehicle was out of state,
Correct.
wasn't it?
Correct.
But, I mean, if he's proved he's a
Three
resident.
forms of-
you
Pays
know,
taxes
yeah,
and
if-
all that
Yeah,
sort
if
of
you're a resident, it
Right.
doesn't matter where the vehicle is registered to, he just hasn't complied with mass registration here. So, that's the motion, any?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Any other discussion? Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Yes.
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 So that's a twofer, Mr. Chairman, part of my report and an item off of the agenda. Lastly, the board, when was your NOAA walkthrough? Was it 2 weeks ago?
Oh, it was longer than that.
Was it?
Yeah. About a month? 5 weeks?
Close to it, yeah. probably
Yikes.
3-4 weeks.
Formally or informally, just purely enjoyment, please, let's get over there again, because it is going to really astound you how gorgeous it is. The space over there is absolutely gorgeous.
When's the move-in date? It's soon, right?
Some have already.
Well,
I thought they were somewhere already.
there was a bit of a setback on the resident move-in date for NOAA for their part of the AJ school, because it was an egress issue. And thankfully, our building inspector did a very good job working through that with them and noticing it, as well as then coming up with a solution, which I like. So the residential piece has not yet been worked out. The senior center, we don't have a firm date. I mean, part of me thinks that, you know, when you have a facility that's up and running like we have up on School Street, and I don't know if we want to work through that building, going through some growing pains of moving in, and then have our piece come in. Certainly an issue for us as anywhere downtown in Webster is parking. So until the parking issue is resolved, so that's going to be tied in when Mrs. Sear continues her progress, which are getting underway, and then hopefully continues on making great progress here right on Church Street. So I think the senior center needs to be driven somewhat by having a stable, you know, scenario of people being moved in, but the parking and do things in a kind of a systematic way.
Because right now, they just have the footings and foundations for what they want to do on the Negus Street side.
Although we may want to have some form of a ribbon-cutting ceremony, because it is beautiful space. It really is.
Very impressive. Did we, about the furnishings for the senior center?
Well, we have an article at town meeting, when we sold that property to Noah, there was money put in escrow, which we haven't touched, and that money, the original design, I don't know if it was in writing, but conceptually, at least, the idea was that could help, outfit a senior center. So, likewise, I would have no reason to hold on to the Church Street, the School Street Council on Aging building, senior center, other than temporary location for a library that would be under construction. So once that worked its way through, if timing was different, I would say you get the senior center offer in my head, but this is an equally effective approach to take the money that we had from the Noah sale and help outfit the senior center.
Motion to approve the town administrator's report.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And we had something else on here, but the person that put this on, I know I didn't, is not here. Am I correct? Okay. Do you need executive session, says?
I do not.
No. Informational mail, okay. There is going to be a public open house at the Regional Resource Center on Tuesday, April 14th, from 4 to 6 p.m., and that's at 562 Main Street. Okay, Earl? Okay.
And for clarification, that's the sheriff's new
Yes,
building on Main Street.
absolutely.
Okay.
Any other
That's next,
informational?
yeah, so that's next
Next
week
Tuesday.
from tomorrow.
Yep, exactly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that court.
Anything else anyone wants to put down? I guess Providence and Worcester Railroad has a little itinerary of different things that they're gonna be doing as far as vegetation. They do that almost every year or so, they let us know. Anything else from anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Courtney, you want to pull the board, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We're adjourned. Thank you.